Okay, so hello.
Hi, Dan. My name is Mark Field, and I am a product manager. I'm a product manager, and what I really do is a couple of different things. Um, Part of my time is spent as a product owner of a backlog for two different teams, and then the other part of my time is spent doing non-product owner, product management kinds of activities related to defining the offering, defining the messaging, the positioning, cross-functional readiness, competitive analysis, customer interactions, and things like that. So that's what I really do. Before before my experience with Open Agile, I had, about 8 years of Agile experience at a previous company, and um, we adopted it pretty early on, and we went through several phases of learning Agile. So coming into this new company, I actually I would not join a company that didn't have an agile mindset. So coming into this company, I actually expected it to be a heck of a lot more agile than it was. Um, but it but it at that time it was in the process of beginning its own agile journey using the open agile approach. So my experience of the first open space was completely different than anything I had experienced at in the previous 8 years of agile experience. It was I can see the similarities, but it was a completely different approach. And I'll admit I was very, very wary of the autonomous teams, self-directed teams, the opt-in, the
Invitation.
opt-in invitations. So just in general, I was very skeptical about, well, we're an organization, we have lots of different teams, we have business goals. Without without some structure and some top down, you need to at least work this way. I really didn't was a little skeptical about how this would all work. But the first open space, really, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because I started to hear all kinds of perspectives that I wouldn't hear, I don't think, in the normal course of the day. It was really interesting to see what topics people proposed. It was very interesting to see how people, kind of collected around different topics and who was moving from topic to topic. And then, of course, it was really interesting to hear what was coming up at the topic, because it was I believe everybody felt it was a safe environment to be able to contribute. So lots of great ideas, feedback, and concerns were all raised. Um, so our organization really took it to heart and uh, correlated all the proceedings and followed up on the proceedings by identifying what items that teams were authorized to change themselves, and other items where teams really can't do it themselves. The leadership team really embraced um, the agile approach, but the open spaces as well, and committed to making changes based on what was coming out. And 3 to 4 months later, we it was clear that the leadership team lived up to their commitment and started to well, actually, by that point, we had implemented a number of different changes, including the leadership team itself, starting to use some of these agile principles to run the business.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a minute. The leadership team decided to do an experiment to do daily scrums and have a backlog, and also to do a product demo at the monthly meeting of the entire organization. So you're in that meeting, they're demoing, and they're showing like stories that they didn't complete and stories that are too big, and other challenges and stuff. And of course, they had some great successes too as they went along. You're in the crowd, you're one of many listening to the leadership team doing their product demo. What are you thinking and feeling as you listen to this narrative for the first time from your leadership team?
Yeah, so it provided a lot of great visibility into what was important to the leadership team, just the nature of the backlog itself. I think it also rallied the organization, particularly it rallied the different functions outside of engineering. It rallied them to actually move the business forward in a measurable way. And everybody was very clear what the priorities were, why we were working on those particular stories, and what the outcome was. You know, we had our bumps at first. You know, at first we had stories, and the leadership team created the done criteria, and then delegated the work, and the people who got the work were like, what does this mean? my complaint still is we have month-long sprints, but the leadership team doesn't finish the stories until 7 or 8 days into it, and then they want it completed a few days before the end of the month, so they're really 2-week sprints with 2 weeks off. But I find it very effective, and it helps the organization align, helps all the different functional groups align on what's important to the organization. Good transparency.
Yeah, it's amazing how that emerged as something that, number one, I didn't see coming, and number two, is incredibly useful org-wide in many different dimensions. Okay, so we go through that process. We're out of the first open space. We're having these experiences of 3 or 4 months leading up to the next one. Are you plotting what you're going to do at the second open space? Are you talking to others about it? How are you preparing for it?
So I'm more of, I like to step back and watch what happens and listen and observe and absorb. I actually did try to get involved in the planning of the second open space, but because of some commitments I had, it just didn't work out for me to actually really participate in the second one. So I wasn't able to help. I wanted to help plan it. I wasn't able to help plan it. I'm not, at least for the second open space, I wasn't trying to promote any topics or anything like that, but I was very interested to see how the second open space would unfold, right? Because the first time it's a novelty, the second time, what's the tail off? So the second open space wasn't, I don't think it was attended as well as the first event, but I was still impressed at the mass that was down there. It's a big ask, right? It's an ask to take a whole day, and there was still great participation in the second open space.
And it also seemed that there was a much higher intensity on a narrower range of topics with more depth on those topics. Right? That's another thing that seemed to come out of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
that's right. Very specific, deep topics as opposed to broader organizational topics. People started to pick very specific things, smaller interest groups.
Yeah. So after that second open space, out goes the coach. 30 days, coach says nothing to the organization. Lots of goodness came out of that. I mean, without getting into the details, there were many interesting things that happened that the organization just did for itself, which I found very interesting. if you were to tell, had the opportunity to tell an organizational leader, someone with a higher authorization, with enough to sponsor this practice, this technique, what would you tell them? What guidance would you give them going in?
So, the guidance that I would give them going in is in the open approach. I think it's difficult to all of a sudden say, teams, you're authorized to do all this stuff, because it takes a while for the teams and the individuals to get used to that kind of autonomy, that kind of authorization. People aren't, unless you've been in that environment, people don't find it very easy to put their own structure in place. So I guess my advice, one of the things that I would have liked to done a little bit differently is take the structure out a little bit at a time. Allow the teams to get more used to these degrees of freedom and kind of ease the teams into it.
Okay.
So I still experience quite often, well, the team sitting around looking at each other, well, how are we going to do this? Who's going to take the lead and be responsible for documenting this process for how we resolve issues, and who's going to take the lead in figuring out, how we're going to manage this work in our tool of choice. So,
Okay.
there still needs to be some leadership that steps in and say, okay, let's do it this way, and the leaders don't always emerge very quickly, and then also it's nice to have some commonality about how things are done across teams too. So take that scaffolding away little by little, and I think that'd be my advice.
And how about any advice you might have for participants, like a developer or a team member, someone who's going to go through this process in an organization? What do you have any tips for them? Any guidance or special things that you want them to know?
Yes. So give it a chance. I'm open to trying different things, and it was still an adjustment for me, an adjustment to okay, let's just let the team figure out how to solve this problem, or let the team provide feedback, or whatever it is. Be more open to, if you're more open to listening, it's really amazing. It's really amazing to hear what the feedback from all these different individuals are, and it always reminds me of this one exercise I did once in a leadership class, where a team was put together, given a particular problem. Everybody went and solved the problem on their own. Then the team got together and solved the problem as a team, and without exception, each team scored higher than the highest scoring individual, and you can really see that happen in these open, in at least the way that we've adopted Agile.
Very nice. Okay, we're near the end of our time. One last thing I'd like to ask you is, do you have any parting wisdom for those who will be watching this video and considering, as a participant, as a leader, even as a coach, right? What would you give them if one or two things, if you have it, is great, about your guidance to them, your final advice and final kind of like the last word?
Well, personally, I think the most important thing is a strong coach, and strong Scrum Masters. I believe that's really the secret to success. That's what my observation has been over the last 6 months, because without that strong, and I view Scrum Masters as coaches as well, but without that strong coaching in place, I think it's very easy for people to lose their way and kind of go back into old ways of working. So that's the one thing that I've really learned to appreciate is the role of the Scrum Masters.
Yes. Okay, so very nice. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.